By noon, Karen had transformed her dining room into a command center that would make a private investigator weep with envy. Color-coded binders lined the mahogany table, each labeled with meticulous care: mailbox infractions, lawn height violations, unauthorized paint colors, and her personal favorite, suspicious activities requiring investigation. She'd invested in a professional-grade camera with a telephoto lens, claiming it was for bird watching, when Bob questioned the $800 charge on their credit card. The truth was far more sinister. Karen was building cases against every single neighbor who dared to exist in her vicinity. "Robert," she called to her husband, who was hiding in the garage, "I need you to witness Mrs. Patterson's violation." Bob appeared in the doorway, looking like a man contemplating witness protection. "What violation, Karen?" "She's hanging her laundry outside. Section 8.2 clearly states that clotheslines must be completely concealed from public view." Karen thrust a laminated HOA rulebook at him, the pages bristling with highlighted sections and angry sticky notes. "It's Tuesday. She's doing laundry. It's a violation." Karen's voice cracked like a whip. "I've documented 17 separate instances of this flagrant disregard for community standards. Look." She flipped through a photo album that belonged in a stalker's evidence collection. Pictures of Mrs. Patterson's clothesline from multiple angles, timestamps, even weather conditions noted in Karen's spidery handwriting. Bob stared at the photos, a chill running down his spine. "Karen, this is insane. This is justice." She slammed the album shut. "Someone has to protect the property values in this neighborhood. Someone has to enforce the rules. And apparently, that someone is me." The phone rang, interrupting her manifesto. Karen snatched it up with the enthusiasm of a telemarketer who'd found a live prospect. "Whitmore Residence, HOA Board Secretary speaking." "Karen, it's Linda from the actual HOA office." The voice sounded tired, like someone who'd been dealing with Karen's calls all morning. "We've received 14 violation reports from you since yesterday." 14, Karen. "And I have 12 more ready to file," Karen said proudly. "This neighborhood has become a lawless wasteland, Linda. Someone needs to—" "Karen, stop." Linda's voice was firm. "We've discussed this. You're the secretary, not the enforcement officer. You take meeting notes. That's it." Karen's face flushed red. "Are you telling me to ignore violations?" "I'm telling you to let people live their lives. Mrs. Chen's mailbox is fine. Mrs. Patterson can hang her laundry. And Mr. Rodriguez's garden gnome collection doesn't violate any actual rules. But the aesthetic cohesion is not your job to maintain." Linda's patience finally snapped. "Karen, if you file one more frivolous complaint, we're going to have to discuss your position on the board." The line went dead. Karen stared at the phone, her world tilting on its axis. "Frivolous? Frivolous." She looked around her command center, at the hundreds of hours of documentation, the carefully catalogued evidence of her neighbor's sins against suburban harmony. Bob was watching her with something that looked disturbingly like pity. "Maybe Linda has a point, honey. Maybe you could just get out," Karen whispered. "What? Get out?" she roared, sweeping her arm across the table and sending binders cascading to the floor. "Everyone's against me. My own husband, the HOA office, the neighbors. But I'll show them. I'll show all of them." As Bob retreated, Karen began gathering her scattered documentation with renewed fury. If the official channels wouldn't listen, she'd find other ways to make her point. She pulled out her phone and began scrolling through her contacts, stopping at a number she'd hoped never to use. Her nephew Derek worked for the City Code Enforcement Office. It was time to escalate this conflict to a whole new level. As they walked her toward the police car, Karen caught sight of her reflection in Mrs. Chen's window, wild-haired, clutching violation notices, being led away by police while her neighbors watched in a mixture of relief and pity. For the first time in months, Karen Whitmore had a moment of perfect clarity. She had become exactly the kind of neighbor she'd always complained about. The irony was almost beautiful, if you liked that sort of thing. Karen Whitmore stood in her pristine front yard at 6:47 a.m., wearing a pink velour tracksuit and wielding a measuring tape like a sword of righteousness. She had discovered something that made her blood pressure spike higher than her HOA dues. Her neighbor's mailbox was exactly 3/4 of an inch too close to the sidewalk. "Excuse me," she shrieked across the fence, startling Mrs. Chen, who was quietly watering her prize-winning roses. "Your mailbox is in violation of Section 12.43 of the Homeowners Association Covenant." Mrs. Chen blinked slowly, water still trickling from her garden hose. "Karen, it's not even 7 in the morning. The rules don't take breaks for your beauty sleep, Margaret," Karen snapped. Though Mrs. Chen's name was actually Lynn, Karen had called her Margaret for 3 years running, despite multiple corrections. "I've documented this infraction with photographic evidence, GPS coordinates, and a notarized statement from my cousin Larry, who's a paralegal." The second shocking moment came when Karen, in her fury, accidentally stepped backward into her own prized garden gnome collection. The ceramic casualties included Whistling Willie and Fishing Fred, both of whom had guarded her tulips since 2019. As she tumbled into the miniature village, a measuring tape went flying, smacking her husband Bob square in the face as he emerged with his morning coffee. "Jesus Christ, Karen!" Bob yelled, coffee splashing across his world's okayest husband shirt. "What are you doing out here?" "Protesting our property values," Karen declared from the ground, surrounded by gnome carnage. She scrambled to her feet, brushing dirt from her tracksuit with the dignity of a fallen empress. "Someone has to maintain standards in this neighborhood." Bob surveyed the destruction. 3 gnomes decapitated, 2 more missing limbs, and his wife standing triumphant among the ceramic casualties, like some deranged homeowners association Godzilla. "You know what, Karen?" Bob said quietly, taking a long sip of his coffee. "Maybe just this once, you could mind your own business." The words hit Karen like a physical blow. Mind her own business? Her own business? Didn't Bob understand that the entire neighborhood was her business? She was the self-appointed guardian of property values, the warrior against chaos. "I am the HOA board secretary," she declared, voice rising to a pitch that made dogs 3 blocks away start howling. "It is literally my business." Mrs. Chen had stopped watering and was now openly staring, along with several other neighbors who had emerged from their homes like prairie dogs sensing drama. Karen felt their eyes on her, felt the weight of their judgment, and something inside her snapped like an over-tightened guitar string. She marched to her house, slammed the front door so hard it rattled the windows, and immediately began drafting violation notices. If they wanted to see HOA Karen in action, she'd give them a show they'd never forget. Starting with Mrs. Chen's suspiciously vibrant roses, which were clearly in violation of the community's tasteful earth tones only landscaping guidelines. The war for Willowbrook Estates had officially begun, and Karen Whitmore intended to win every single battle. Derek Whitmore had always dreaded his Aunt Karen's calls, but this Tuesday afternoon's conversation reached new heights of uncomfortable family obligation. Sitting in his cluttered code enforcement office, he listened to her increasingly frantic demands while making exaggerated faces at his coworker Martinez. "Aunt Karen, I can't just show up to your neighborhood because you don't like someone's garden gnomes," Derek explained for the 3rd time. Code enforcement deals with actual safety violations, structural damage, health hazards, fire risks. But the property values, Derek, these people are destroying everything we've worked for. Through his office window, Derek could see actual problems. A collapsed porch on Elm Street, a house with exposed electrical wiring, a fence that was genuinely falling into the street. Meanwhile, his aunt was having a mental breakdown over mailbox positioning. "Listen," he said, attempting diplomacy, "how about I come by this weekend for dinner? And we can talk about—" "No." Karen's voice reached a pitch that made Derek hold the phone away from his ear. "I need someone official here today. These people think they can just ignore the rules because nobody's watching. But I'm watching, Derek. I'm always watching." The line went quiet except for Karen's heavy breathing. Derek exchanged a worried look with Martinez, who had stopped pretending not to eavesdrop. "Okay," Derek said carefully. "I'll swing by after work, just to take a look around, see if there are any actual code violations. But Karen, I need you to promise me you won't do anything else today. No more phone calls, no more confrontations with neighbors. Can you promise me that?" "Of course," Karen said, her voice suddenly sweet. "I'll just wait for you to arrive." Derek hung up, already regretting his decision. Martinez shook his head sympathetically. "Family, man. Can't live with them. Can't legally change your name and move to Montana." What Derek didn't know was that Karen had already hung up and was dialing another number, this time to the non-emergency police line. If city code enforcement was coming, she reasoned, they should have proper backup. After all, some of these neighbors looked like the type who might resist authority. "Police department, how can I help you?" "Yes, I need to report suspicious activity in my neighborhood," Karen said, her voice taking on the tone of a concerned citizen rather than an unhinged HOA vigilant. "I've noticed several violations of city codes, and when I tried to address them civilly, the residents became aggressive." It wasn't technically a lie, Karen reasoned. Mrs. Chen had seemed irritated when Karen measured her mailbox. That could be considered aggressive if you squinted at it right. What kind of aggressive behavior, ma'am? Karen's imagination, fueled by years of crime procedurals and a persecution complex that could power a small city, began to run wild. Threatening language, possible property damage. "I'm genuinely concerned for my safety." By 4 p.m., Karen had positioned herself in her front window like a sniper in a nest, watching for Derek's arrival. She'd also prepared a comprehensive briefing packet for the responding officers, complete with photos, timestamps, and what she considered to be compelling evidence of her neighbor's descent into lawlessness. When she saw the code enforcement truck pull up, followed by not one but 2 police cruisers, Karen felt a surge of vindication so strong it was almost intoxicating. Finally, someone was taking her seriously. She rushed outside, briefing packet in hand, ready to guide the authorities through her neighbor's crimes against suburban order. This was her moment of triumph, her chance to restore peace and property values to Willowbrook Estates. What Karen didn't realize was that Derek had specifically requested police backup, not because of dangerous neighbors, but because he was genuinely worried about his aunt's mental state. And the officers had been briefed not about suspicious neighbors, but about a possible wellness check on an increasingly unstable HOA board member. The trap was set, though Karen didn't know she was the one caught in it. Derek climbed out of his truck and immediately spotted his Aunt Karen, charging across her yard like a linebacker heading for the end zone. Clutching what appeared to be a military-grade tactical folder, behind him, Officers Martinez and Thompson exchanged the weary look of people who dealt with neighborhood disputes before. "Derek, officers, thank goodness you're here." Karen's voice carried across 3 yards, causing several neighbors to peer out their windows. "I have everything documented, photos, timestamps, GPS coordinates, even soil samples from where Mrs. Chen's sprinkler system has been illegally overwatering." Officer Martinez, a veteran of 20 years who'd seen everything from alien abduction reports to complaints about aggressive squirrels, took one look at Karen's manic expression and the military precision organization of her evidence, and immediately understood the situation. "Ma'am, we're here for a wellness check," he said gently. "Your nephew was concerned about." "Wellness check. Wellness check." Karen's voice could have shattered glass. "I called you about the criminals destroying our neighborhood. Look at this evidence." She thrust the folder at Officer Thompson, who took it with the resignation of someone handling a live grenade. The folder contained 47 photographs of Mrs. Chen's mailbox from different angles, including what appeared to be measurements taken with a ruler held against the post. There were detailed charts tracking Mrs. Patterson's laundry hanging schedule, complete with weather data and fabric type analysis. Most disturbing was a hand-drawn map of the neighborhood with red X's marking violation sites and arrows indicating suspected conspiracy connections. "Ma'am," Officer Thompson said carefully, "this appears to be Very thorough documentation of normal neighborhood activities. Normal? Karen shrieked. A 3/4-inch mailbox violation is normal. Unauthorized earth tone deviation is normal. Derek stepped forward, his face flushed with embarrassment. Aunt Karen, maybe we should go inside and… Don't you Aunt Karen me, she snapped. You're supposed to be helping me enforce city codes, not taking their side. She gestured wildly at the houses around them, where curious neighbors had now emerged to watch the spectacle. Mrs. Chen appeared at her fence, still holding her garden hose. Officers, is everything all right? Karen's been taking pictures of my house all week. Pictures? Officer Martinez's eyebrows rose. Ma'am, have you been photographing your neighbor's properties without permission? Karen's face went white, then red, then purple. It's for DOCUVNTTION. It's for the HOA. It's for property values. Ma'am, you need to calm down, Officer Thompson said, but Karen was beyond calming down. She was beyond reason, beyond social norms, beyond the event horizon of acceptable HOA behavior. You don't understand, she screamed, her voice echoing off the houses. I'm the only one who cares. I'm the only one fighting FOOER. Without me, this place would be chaos. She spun around, pointing at each house in turn. Mrs. Chen's roses are too bright. Mrs. Patterson hangs her laundry like some kind of medieval peasant. Mr. Rodriguez has CVNT in garden gnomes, when the covenant clearly states tasteful earth-tone decorations only. And don't get me started on the Johnsons' unauthorized fence stain. The neighbors watched in fascination as Karen unraveled completely, her carefully constructed facade of righteous authority crumbling into something that looked disturbingly like a complete psychological break. Ma'am, Officer Martinez said firmly, I'm going to need you to come with us. Come with you? Come with you a year. Karen's voice reached a frequency that made dogs start barking throughout the neighborhood. For evaluation, Derek said quietly, Karen, you need help. The words hit her like a physical blow. Help? She didn't need help. She needed support. She needed people who understood that someone had to maintain standards. Someone had to fight against the forces of suburban entropy. As the officers approached her, Karen made one last desperate play. She pulled out her phone and began dialing frantically. I'm calling the mayor. I'm calling the city council. I'm calling Channel 7 News. Someone needs to hear about the conspiracy against property values in this neighborhood. But as Officer Martinez gently took her arm, Karen realized that no one was coming to rescue her. No cavalry of code enforcement officers. No army of like-minded HOA warriors. Just her, standing in her own front yard, surrounded by the evidence of her obsession and the concerned faces of people who thought she'd lost her mind. Maybe, just maybe, they were right.